this economy must look like us. It must be broadly reflective of the demographics. When it's broadly reflective of the demographics, we can retire transformation, because Black people are not helpless, hopeless, useless people who need a perpetual crutch against which they want to lean for the rest of their lives. All they want is not a hand down, but a hand up.
You know what I'm taking from what you are saying is the importance of responsibility. That sense of responsibility shaped your decision making. Knowing that you are responsible for your family, you are responsible for others. It shaped your destiny. It shaped your entrepreneurial thinking. That is number one. What I also am taking from it is that you always were looking on how to grow whatever the business is, so even when you were stable financially, you never rested on your laurels, because you kept on investing, simply because even now, as you are saying, that sense of responsibility for others, that sense of responsibility for your nieces and your relatives, and that sense of responsibility will add for the African child. That's what I'm taking.
Let me add on just what Sis Nomvuyo said. The economy of Zimbabwe is held intact by the 12 million Zimbabweans, 5 million who are outside of Zimbabwe, shared between Botswana and South Africa. They work in these two countries, they earn money, they send it back to Zimbabwe. And their siblings, their nieces and nephews are able to go to university, and they are able to become chartered accountants, like Mthandazo Peter Moyo. At some stage of the 5 major mining companies in South Africa, 4 of them had Zimbabweans as managing directors. Only 1 had a Zambian as a managing director. This is Mbazima, who was looking after the Anglo-American mines from ZCCM, Nkopola, right down to South Africa. But let me also add, Sis Nomvuyo, by saying, yes, yes, we need to save, we need to have a sense of responsibility. But structurally, systemically, the question that we need to ask ourselves is, why is it that 32 years into democracy in April, why is it that all the petrol attendants and all the waitrons and all the cashiers are still Black? That 32 years into democracy, why is it that poverty still has a Black, a feminine, and a rural face? Why is it that some of us who now are mainstays of our families, we didn't choose to be the mainstay of our family, to say that they will depend on us. Nobody wants that responsibility on their shoulders. But it's an understanding that that's what it means to be an African. When we say it takes a whole village to bring up an African child, it's not just a saying, it's because that's how we used to live. If you were the oldest daughter, you were the deputy mom. If you were the oldest son, you were the deputy dad. And God forbid, if you lost your father, like I did at the age of 17, I was left with no option but to say, oh, now it's up to me. I need to make sure that the 3 that come behind me also have an opportunity to go to school until they say, I've done enough, so that they can never complain that I don't have shoes, I didn't have the fees paid. Here's the last one. But what I love in hindsight, of course, it's a lot of responsibility. Some people even call it black tax. I would never call it black tax because our parents didn't have policies. They didn't save. When I went to Wits for the first time, 1981, those 18-year-olds went there with beetles that they'd bought themselves because their parents had taken policies probably 20 years earlier and now they'd matured. With us, we didn't even have the transport money to take us to Wits. So I think systemically and systematically, 32 years into democracy, we haven't even begun to dismantle the apartheid spatial planning. Why do I mention it? Because it's important. Apartheid was intentional, deliberate, and purposeful in making sure that black people live the closest 40 kilometers from their places of work. That act in and of itself made sure that it took them 40 minutes one way and 40 minutes coming back, which then gobbled up on average 40% of their monthly wages. If you add food, that's 70% of their monthly wages. So they're left with 30% to clothe us and to buy shoes for us and take us to school. Therefore, when financial advisors tell us today that there's this notion called compound interest, and it works by you saving early, whatever the amount, and saving for long, it is impossible for black people to save. And it's one thing that when we became free, we haven't even begun to address. What breaks my heart is that we had an opportunity to create new townships our own, not ver genoeg, which means it's beyond 4 kilometers. Now they're getting closer. Now the question is it ver genoeg? So we had Cosmo City to build. Guess what? Cosmo City is 40 kilometers away from downtown Joburg, to show that we're not thinking deeply and profoundly about just two things: improving the quality of lives of the majority of our people so that there's a better life for all, not just elected officials. So black people are poor not because they are lazy. They are poor because the entire system is designed to oppress them, to exclude them, to subjugate them. And by the way, this is also true for the continent of Africa. This is also true for South Africa, because in 1910, when Great Britain had an option to give this South Africa either to the black elites that were more educated and better farmers, or to the white male Afrikaners, they went to a corner and say, but what do we actually want from South Africa? Just three things. They said, one, we want a crucible of cheap labor forever. Guess what? 32 years into democracy, we are still cheap labor. But forever, it will be determined by you and I. Number two, they said, they can go to the belly of the earth and dig for the gold. The deepest mine in the world is Western Deep Level. It's now called Mpone, 5 kilometers. There is no mine that goes that deep anywhere else in the world. And we will have the first right of refusal as Great Britain. Here's the one that should break our heart. They said, of course, they scratch on the surface or even on the riverbeds, find a diamond or two. We will determine the price of those diamonds. Hence the creation of the London Sales Organization. The analogy is like you plant your own tomatoes. You water them, you talk to them, you harvest them, you take them and stand by the road. A taxi driver comes and looks at me, so no, these are big and red. I will determine the price. That's exactly what the London Sales Organization is doing. It's our diamonds, it's our country. They tell us at what price. When that happens, there's no way that Africa would ever be rich. The same way that we dig the minerals because we don't beneficiate them. We don't know the value, the utility. We send them somewhere else. It comes back to us. They charge us 10 times the price. Even coal, I mean, we've got 400 years of coal underneath Mpumalanga. We missed not one, but 3 commodity booms. The first one was the gold boom. The second was the coal boom. Now, there's the 5,000 per ton gold price. But before I come to what can we do personally to do something about it, let me go back to Africa and South Africa and make a statement that South Africa is not a poor country, Africa is not a poor continent, just poorly managed. You see, if we don't think for ourselves, we place our future in the hands of others. It is up to us to determine our own new world. We were warned that if we don't look after our freedom well, the colonizer, the oppressor, and the racist will come back as the investor. They'll give themselves sexy names like the market and will be at the mercy of the market. So to unlock this potential, we need to, like Alcoholics Anonymous, accept that we are a problem. You know, even during years of slavery, the slave master came in big ships. They docked by the port. They didn't go to the hinterland. It was our chiefs and our kings who collected most of us in the hinterland and then put us in kraals like cows and then would give us to the slave master for a bag full of money. So the oppressor would not be so strong without the complicity of some of the oppressed. We need to take culpability of the role played by us today, but also by our forebears, instead of just blaming apartheid that we brought this to ourselves. We are the only country in Africa that became free from colonialism, and we didn't do these three things. Number one, exponentially increase the educational level of our own people. Since when is 30% an acceptable pass mark? Number two, we are the only country to be free from colonialism, and we did not increase the ownership of the economy by at least double digit by the indigenous people. Even Gabriel Robert Mugabe in Zimbabwe, poor as it is, 12 million of them as they are, the ownership of that economy is owned at least double digit by the Zimbabwean people. The last one is that even 32 years into democracy, we are the only country that became free from colonialism. And then just after 30 years, out of our own free volition, we willingly gave over power to the oppressor. Willingly. You know, history is replete with examples. Nowhere in the world does white people voluntarily give up privilege. No, you said I must be deep. The duration of oppression is never determined by the oppressor. It's always determined by the oppressed. It's only when the oppressed say this much and no longer, then we are going to be free. As a country, if we don't think, you know, here's a good example. We built what is called the Ben Schoeman Highway to connect Johannesburg and Pretoria. At that time, we had a 12 million car park. 3 million were traversing between Joburg and Pretoria. We knew that to build the road, it will take us 3 years. Guess what we did? We built the road for 3 million cars, knowing that it will take us 3 years to complete. By the time we finished in 3 years, of course, we had more than 3 million cars. That explains the congestion from day one when you opened the Ben Schoeman. No, it gets worse. An amazing, proud South African called Van der Bijl. He built not one, but 3 institutions. He built Eskom. He built the IDC. He built Eskom. But let me tell you about Eskom. He builds Eskom. Nameplate 56 gigawatt electricity. But he built it for only 10% of the population there, which is just for white people. That's why in rural areas there's no electricity. That's why in the townships there's no electricity. So we become free on the 27th of April 1984. We inaugurate a new president on the 10th of May. We say we are going to build 4 million new houses. We say we are going to electrify at a rate of 10,000 homes a month when Dr. Ruel Khoza is the chairman of Eskom, which had a higher ratings by the 3 rating agencies than Sovereign. But that 56 gigawatt of electricity had now become 42 gigawatt of electricity. Now you add more people. Of course, it stands to reason that you have to increase the capacity. And we didn't. Right at the last minute, when we realized, oh, we don't have enough electricity, we say, okay, let's build new electric stations. Even then, we don't build modular, build and use, build and use, build and like you do Lego. We say, oh, in order to steal, because the intent was looting, let's build the biggest, the tallest, the highest. Because when you build Medupi and Kuseni, and I include Ingula, which is hydroelectric power, collectively they're going to cost 160 billion. So if you steal 500 million, it's like small change. It's a rounding error. They won't see. That's why we did it. But Medupi was supposed to give us 9.6 gigawatt. Kusile was supposed to give us 9.6 gigawatt. That gap was just 6 gigawatt. Because at peak, we need 32 gigawatts. At the best performance, we don't even provide 27. So for 17 years, we have load shedding. What were we trying to solve? 6 gigawatt. We should have finished Medupi and Kusile and Ingula by 2016. We didn't. But we had already spent 300 billion instead of the initial 150 billion. And we didn't have 50% of the capacity. We didn't have 70% of electricity availability factor because the intent was looting. So what can we do personally? You said I must be deep. I think this is an elective year, local government elections. But 2 years from now, it will be national elections. It's called the political economy because it doesn't matter what we do. Politics have a disproportionate impact on what we do. So I think we need to choose our leaders wisely. Leave the thieves behind because they've shown that they don't love us. Because you have to love your people to lead them. So number one, we should choose the type of leaders that would help us root out and defeat state capture. Because state capture in 5 years, we stole 1.5 trillion rands. That's 2/3 of what Edward Kieswetter collects from you and I and from companies in 1 year. That's what we stole in 5 years. In the 9 wasted years, we siphoned off on average 200 billion just to the 2 Zupta families. Let me digress. In COVID, AfriForum and Solidarity built a technical in Pretoria for 300 million. There's a university, it will still be standing for 300 years. The same week in Gauteng alone, we spent 450 million in Gauteng to fumigate the schools that were closed in COVID. And we have nothing to show for it. So root out and defeat state capture. Number 2, we need to complete the unfinished work of transformation. Because if these Africans have nothing to lose, they will ban the only library that serves the 2 times. So this economy must look like us. It must be broadly reflective of the demographics. When it's broadly reflective of the demographics, we can retire transformation because black people are not helpless, hopeless, useless people who need a perpetual crutch against which they want to lean for the rest of their lives. All they want is not a hand down, but a hand up. They want to be provided with the boots and the straps with which they can pull themselves up. That's what we are failing to do as a people. The third, we need ethical leadership because ethics is both prescribed and proscribed. My grandmother says ethics, it's what you do, not what you say when nobody's watching. The fourth, we need good governance. Yes, cooperative governance is the separation of ownership from control. But good governance does not steal from the mouths of the babies, the sick, and the dying, like we saw during COVID-19. The penultimate one is we need service delivery. Because that's the job description of somebody who chooses to be a public servant. You see, if you choose by vocation or calling to be a public servant, it means from get-go, you forgo the Bentley. For you, a Toyota Tez is good enough because the definition is in the name. When you say public protector, it's very clear who is she protecting. Of course, the public. So if I'm a public servant, it says the best amongst us lead with the heart of a servant. Servant leadership is not a leader with many servants. The last one, We need law and order, safety and security in the Western Cape. 8 municipalities, gangs employ more people than government. South Africans are not free walking in the streets because they are exposed. I can almost understand. But South Africans are not safe in their own homes, which is supposed to be their fortress, their sanctuary, because it's the contact crimes that are increasing. When we release monthly statistics, we're supposed to use them for planning. It's like census. We plan census so that we know how many South Africans are, 65 million. We know that 1.2 million of them start school. But you know, when they get to university, we don't have enough universities. When they qualify, we don't have enough places for them. We know how many children are born a day, every day, but we don't plan for them because we read these statistics, we verbalize them in parliament, and then we get into our BMW X5s, a motorcade of 10 cars, without being intentional, deliberate, and purposeful and planning. In 2022, there was 1.2 million students in the 26 public universities. I exclude the TVET colleges. They needed 50 billion to educate them on a fee-free basis. If we looked at only those that qualify, a combined household income of 350,000 per annum, we need 20 billion. But there was a small problem, of course, historical debt of 16.5 billion, 9.2 billion of which is irrecoverable. The same year, 100,000 young people finished their studies but couldn't graduate because they owed money, therefore swelling the ranks of the unemployed. But yet we've got 400 companies listed on the JSE. We've got 1.5 million that are called small and medium enterprises with a turnover of 300 million or less. We've got 80 that hold securities in the 60 private equity firms. If each one of them, you know, the CEO of a mining company, earned in 1 year 300 million. If we put into a historical debt fund a measly 1 million rand, in 1 year, not in 32 years of democracy, would have wiped off the entire 16.5 billion. And we give these young leaders a chance to reclaim their self-worth, their self-respect, to deal with issues of mental health and period poverty. That's what we can do individually. So instead of my hiring a garden service, what if I employed one person and I paid them 5,000 a month? They can educate their children and clothe them, and those have the same opportunity to become doctors. When I buy my house, do I even ask, who are the convincing attorneys? Who are the notarial attorneys? Do I even know who's going to register the bond? It's your money, it's your house. Imagine if you were specific to say, I want Me Makotoko to be the conveyancer because it is my house. Would change the prognosis of black people. When I go to buy a car in the showroom, if I looked around and say, I'll go to Memadin King right at the corner and say, I want you to get my 10% commission. I want to buy my X5 from you. That's what it means for us as a people. So we are poor by choice. So to be practical, on Monday, an announcement came from SBV. You can write it down in Google if you didn't see it. That announcement says Mark Barrett, the CEO of SBV, is retiring in 2028. Effective 1st of June this year, he's handing over to Tata Hamilton Melani, who is now the deputy CEO, so that when he retires, he takes over from Mark Barrett. That's what I'm doing as chairman of SBV. It's not an accident. At the Bidvest Group Limited, where I'm currently chairman, the listed entity is one of the top 40 on the JSE. We employ 137,000 people. Last year, we posted 127 billion South African rands, 12 billion trading profit. We've got 7 divisions. All of these 7 divisions, I'll come back, and we've got 350 companies. 250 of them are operating entities. There's Bidvest Bank, there's Adcock Ingram, there is Prestige, there's Steiner, But there's an automotive division called Bidvest McCarthy. All 7 of these divisions, 4 of them are now led by women. The group CEO of the Bidvest Group Limited is an African woman. Her name is Sis Nompumelelo Tembekile Madisa. She's just turned 45. And she has done the most amazing things. First, to breach the 100 billion turnover mark. 2016, we broke this company into 2. She inherited only Bidvest South Africa. We are now in 7 countries. 38-year-old, proudly South African company founded by Brian Joffe, a Jewish guy. For the first time in the history of this country, we are now in North America. We bought UK's #1 hygiene business called PHS. We paid 437 million pounds. We are now the #1 hygiene company in the world. We just took over from Rentokil. And they include their services business just in hygiene. We now #1. We are now in, yes, US of A, we're in Ireland, we're in Northern Ireland, we are in Spain, we are in Singapore, we are in Australia. And she does this within 2 years. She has the record of posting the highest dividend in the history of this country. And she does that, listen to this, with a board that is 80% black and 73% African women. At the Business Leadership South Africa, BLSA, where the 100 top CEOs of the listed entities on the jersey, when I took an early retirement at age 55, said, "You're far too young to retire, come and be our boss." I became the CEO of BLSA. And I said, "Okay, I'll do it because I understand why BLSA was formed." But I left an amazing warrior of a woman in BLSA as the CEO of BLSA. Her name is Busisiwe Mavuso. Let me end with an example at Shell Oil Products Africa, where I was the group CEO, I was the chairman, but also I was the executive vice president of our upstream business. There I left 5 of the entire exco as people who look like me. Ubabuhloni Pizwe Justice Mtolo as the chairman of Shell Oil Products Africa. Matt Tabile Muluku as head of legal. Prithni Naidu as the head of human capital. And Me Babrama Kubedu from Bushbuckridge as our CFO. Because as I end this Nomvuyo, when you are blessed like you and I are to occupy spaces that your people ordinarily do not occupy, there are really only 2 choices that you can do. On the one hand, you can continue to be piloted, highlighted, and celebrated as the first one and only, and it makes you feel good. Or on the other hand, you can kick down those doors and bring in people that look like you.